And Rob, first of all, I mean, how likely do you rate the chances of any kind of diplomatic solution being found during this call today?
Well, it seems pretty unlikely, given the positions that both sides have taken. You know, the Russians have made clear that, as far as they're concerned, there are red lines, and that the West, NATO, US, and others, has to back down on those red lines. In other words, it must say that Ukraine will never be a member of NATO, and it must say that NATO will never put its infrastructure into place inside Ukraine. NATO is never going to agree to that, you know, as Joe Biden has made clear in the last few days. So they have two positions which are completely incompatible. The problem, though, for the Russians, I think, is it's very difficult for them to back down. Having put so many troops into position in the western part of Russia along the border with Ukraine, according to most accounts, between 90 and 100,000 troops, and a posture which suggests that they could be bringing more in by the end of January, putting the numbers up to about 175,000. To pull them back without actually having got something out of this posturing, it's well nigh impossible for Vladimir Putin. So he really cannot afford to back down unless he gets something in return. But what could that something be? That's really the problem, I think, at the moment. What he may be looking for is a promise, at least, for talks with the Americans further down the road, perhaps later in 2022, on the architecture of European security post-Cold War. Because what Vladimir Putin is most concerned about is the threat posed, whether we in the West consider it real or not, by NATO to Russia. If, for instance, the missiles that are currently in place in Romania are put into position in eastern Ukraine, they could strike, in theory at least, Moscow within 7 to 10 minutes. That is not something that Vladimir Putin can very easily live with. That is why the stakes are so high at the moment.
And that's why this talk between Putin and Biden is taking place today. Now, if Biden appears unsuccessful in persuading Putin towards some kind of diplomatic negotiation here, what other options does Biden and indeed NATO now have to try and avert another full-scale war in the region?
Yeah, I mean, both sides are in a bit of a bind here. Russia, for the reasons I've given, that they can't really afford to be seen to be backing down. Otherwise, it looks like bluster. And if you're called out too often on bluster, you lose your power to persuade or to threaten. At the moment, Putin is raising the stakes, and they're high enough for NATO, Joe Biden and others to be seriously concerned about what it is that the Russians are planning to do towards the end of January. Will they, won't they? Nobody is absolutely sure. And that is Putin's strength at the moment. But Biden's in a not the similar position, but his position's not particularly strong either. He knows that he cannot prevent the Russians from launching an attack if that's what they decide to do. But he knows, too, that he's got to appear to be tough. He knows that domestically in the United States, unless he takes a tough stance, the Republicans will go after him. So both sides have difficulties here, and will be looking for some sort of way out of it. But at this stage, in this particular conversation, it's very difficult to see how either side can get very much out of it. Both sides will prefer to push this down the road.
Rob Parsons, thank you very much.